So on that topic, this one is for you, Mari. At one point early on, Will helps Sasha push through a panic attack. And ironically, when he needs her to provide the same guidance, Sasha is unable to aid him. Do you think Sasha's presence could have helped calm him, or was he already past the point of no return?
At that point, you know, what's happening in the film is mirroring what happened for Addison, in that the neurons from whatever's happening psychosomatically and what's happening physically, it's not computing. I mean, I can relate. I mean, during the pandemic, I struggled a lot with anxiety myself. And I think that there was a void because of the lack of social connection, right? Social interaction. And I had never realized how important social interaction, community was to me, for getting out of my own hypochondriacal tendencies from a very young age. And I'm a Latina. My parents and my family are very much worrisome people. And so they always go to the darkest, worst possible outcome. And having a community and having social interaction allows you to kind of distract, right? And so during the pandemic, we didn't have that. We had Zoom, but you're still in your four walls and you turn the Zoom off and you're like, okay, great, I have cancer still. You know what I mean? And so I think in the movie, like, you know, at that point when in the beginning, he's dipping his toes into what's going on. His mom is on his back. His boss is on his back. He's doing his best job at managing and doing the emotional labor for his work bestie, who's tripping because of the work situation and what's going on in her personal life. But of course, it's easier to deal with someone externally than it is to deal with internally, right? So by the time he has his full-on panic attack, first of all, Sasha's not equipped to deal with this. She can't even deal with her own stuff. So when it comes to seeing it, you know, completely crumble in front of her, she's like, okay, that's my cue to leave because I can't deal with this. Although her presence is calming and I'm sure it helped, she doesn't have the license. She doesn't have the training to give him like manageable steps to deal with his trauma. Sasha also is like, no, that's triggering for me. Like, you're supposed to be the person that helps me when I have my panics. You're the person, you're the buffer between me and Blossom and me and the world. So when he's falling apart, she's like, well, you're falling apart. What about me? No, I'm going to go smoke some weed. Bye. Like, you know, like I'm leaving. So it's a very interesting relationship, but yeah.
Man, this movie doesn't have anything pertinent packed into it, does it? Like
no, I liken this to like a beautiful Marvel movie.
Yeah,
where it's just
a romp. It's a good time.
Just a romp. Good people being chosen.
It's just like a lot of attractive people.
Yeah,
and...
well, that's true.
Come on, yeah. there's just nothing like it. You know, it's like you're scared, but also like you're laughing your freaking ass off. And it's like, you know, the Scream series does that, but like it's camp, you know. And this isn't camp. Like we're talking about in this interview right now, like we're talking about shit that. I don't know about you guys, but I'm going to go have an existential crisis about later. You know, I'm going to be like, oh my God, I'm having smoking this cigarette and be like, oh my God, everybody was talking about like, is the wolf inside of me? Like, do I carry it with me from childhood? Like, you know, it's just the pandemic. Is it stress? I don't know. It's like, you know, but the fact that we're even having this conversation and that kind of awareness in general is evocative and also speaks to the time. Right. A film like this wouldn't, you know, I just don't even like it might have been made, but I don't think it would be received in the same way because suddenly we're all like asking these questions of ourselves. And, you know, and I think that's why, you know, everybody when I'm talking to, you know, the business is like, oh, you're doing that film and it's really cool. It's like, you know, is it just another thing for you? I'm like, no, this is very special and very important. And this film needs to exist. And I believe in it. And they're like, why? And I'm like, well, because it's furthering the fucking conversation. And it's doing it through, you know, through the guise of, you know, a hit horror movie. But we're having these conversations as a result. It doesn't matter what it does for me anyway, in the box office or, you know what I mean? Or like what it does commercially or not, or for any of our careers. The fact that it exists and we're already having this conversation, we've already won. It's all
Zach,
worth
I also wanted to add to what you're saying. It's so true because, like, if anything, it's going to evoke thought for people who struggle with mental health issues, which I don't know now post pandemic, or it's still happening, people. But, people, like, we do need to be more normalizing the fact that we each struggle with our own stuff, right? And that healing itself is not just we start and we've accomplished it. It happens every day for the rest of your life. And I think a really great example of that is that in the movie, spoiler alert, you realize that he does not get better. You know what I mean? He, at the end, he is still with the wolf. He's just kind of learned to manage and live with it. And so, if anything, people will recognize themselves and realize that the end goal is not to overcome it, it's to live a life with it and live a life that's meaningful and have relationships with your significant others, with your coworkers, with whoever comes in and out of your life. And being real with it allows you to have deeper connections with other people.
That's literally exactly Mara, that's exactly the point of the movie. That's you guys.
Management, learning with it, I mean, I saw my brother go through that, and it's like, you could just remove all of the tools and like maybe he'd be fine. But that's the thing, it's like that's how it's different from like a broken wrist. It doesn't just heal and go away. It's like, well, unarguably, as you age, that will also come back to haunt you. But I guess the thing is that, like, you have to manage it. You have to manage these things, and we have to tend to them and grow them.
There's no cure. There are tools that you get, but there's no cure, and that's okay. That's okay. And in fact, I think it's more honest in terms of our lives. The more we talk about, especially as like my generation, as we get more opportunities now that like we're not like a 22 and like, a Lionsgate exec is like, what do you know? And now I'm just like, well, now I'm in my 30s and I've been through some shit. So listen, but I think what's cool and awesome about specifically our generation is like, we want to talk about it because we grew up in a place where we couldn't, or like, and my mom did. And this is the thing. It's like, my mom's I don't want to call the villain, if there's a villain or an antagonist, is mental health, right? And it's just like, there is some scenes cut for time, but I think, and my hope is like, when you look at my father and my mother, it's not that I'm like villainize them. I'm like, one, it's through my perspective, so like warping whatever I have, but two, like, I miss my mom, I always use the metaphor, whatever it is, Jekyll and Hyde, right? When she's Hyde, she doesn't remember anything she comes back to when she's Jekyll. And when she's Jekyll, she's amazing. She's loving, she's caring. But when she's Hyde, it's not her. And it's so hard to unwrap that part of your brain, that because it's, it looks like a duck and sounds like a duck, but it's not. I look like my mother and it sounds like my mother, but it's almost like a demon has possessed her in a way. I mean, if you use a horror metaphor, because it is. I mean, that's what it is. It's not the person that it's a chemical imbalance that has completely switched and worked your view to exist the way it does. And it's really unfortunate. And I unfortunately have not talked to my mother in a while because of that very purpose. But she, I miss her. I miss who she was when I was a kid.
This question is for Devin. Will and Luke say that they have been together for 8 months. Their eventual level of intimacy and Luke's care for Will's well-being came as quite a surprise to me. When do you think Luke became in too deep, so to speak?
Ooh, that's good. That's a good question. I think we talked about this a lot, like Addison and I in the beginning. Mm-hmm. The idea that like Luke's definitely getting something from this. Like I think that it is. And I know this from I've been both versions of the characters in a relationship, but when you're the one that's the caregiver, it feels really good a lot of the time. Like it feels like it gives you purpose. It feels like it's like you get to be the one that's the good one, the one that's like in control. And so I think that there is something for Luke that is selfish in that. And I think that's kind of fun to play with the darker side of Luke, because he does all these very nice things, but I think there is a part of him that it's motivated from this place of, like, I mean, his day job, he works in therapy, like he works with people, like he's drawn to that. So I think being drawn to a partner that also gives him access to getting to feel sort of powerful and in control is part of what probably drew him to Will in the first place. But I do think that, like, he, at the end of the day, like, and there's talk about his sister. Like, we talk a little bit in one scene about Luke's sister sort of having a similar thing and that she OD'd. I think that, I'm sure that has impacted him in a big way as a person as well, and why this is familiar territory to find someone like Will. But in terms of getting too deep, I think when he's broken up with, I think that comes as a really big surprise. I think that's not something that he was expecting. And I think that it's not something that I was expecting too. When I read the scene, I think when we did that scene, I think I was a lot more emotional than I thought I would be, because it's that sad thing of like, oh fuck, this has not been an equitable relationship. And like, I've gotten to be on this high and mighty place the whole time. And now he's going to go, and we can never actually like, I don't really know how vulnerable Luke ever was with Will. Like, I don't know if that was something, like, Will was always vulnerable with Luke, but Luke, you know, like, I don't know. I think that in that moment, I had this sense of like, for the first time, like when we were doing that scene, Zach, of like, oh my God, I'm losing. There's so much more territory to go with this person. And now it's over, it's gone. And that's it. And that's so sad.
I will say though, to piggyback off you, Devin, I think for me, what, especially with the rewrite that I did with the dancing scene, is I think that in itself is the crux of their relationship, right? There's this kind of timidness that, especially, when you bring it to, and there's obviously love, but, Will's a song and dance man. He was raised a song and dance man.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything he does is exciting and new and wild. And that scene where he's like, dance with me, and this like really dumb, kind of way to do it. But like, that's that thing. That is that moment that I hold on to, or held on to as a filmmaker when I was, kind of going through this. Like, you see these moments of like pure joy or that you two brought so well, that like, you're like, oh, I see it. Having just, I'm about a year and a half with my boyfriend, but funnily enough, I was around 8 months when, and I don't have a boyfriend during this actual story. This isn't my actual boyfriend. This is actually my first boyfriend. No one ever wanted to love me before now. I'm kidding. Oh my God. Jesus God. What I'm saying, I guess what I'm saying is like, I understood, because you're at that point where you probably said, I love you. I mean, you have, but you're also at that point where you could have a toe out if you wanted to. And like, I just, that for me, that was like a very interesting, like, okay, what do we do here? Especially when someone's in crisis, especially with someone like Luke's character, who is essentially involved in crisis, and like, where that bleeds into your relationship too, because you're like, you're also there. I mean, it happens with a lot of my friends. It's like, when you're like, I can be therapist to you, and that will foster closeness, but that's very dangerous, because if you do that and you're not seeking professional help, then that just like creates a whole can of worms, to unravel, which I think ultimately that does happen.
So I have a less serious question, because I was super curious. Was there any hidden symbolism behind the adorable winking dog with the libations poster? Every time. That was my favorite part of the movie. Every time I was like cackling at the TV. People thought it was crazy.
Yeah, no, I mean, so that's actually when I was writing the script, like, that calendar was hanging on my wall. I don't remember who gave it to me. It might have been my sister, but and it never got past January because I was too depressed and hurt to flip it. So every day I would sit down and write, or sit at my desk, I was looking at that goddamn fucking dog, with a little wink. So that is like how that got in there. And then my production designer, Nick, was like, so that thing, I'm like, oh, I got it right here. And so they did it. And then with other Zach, our VFX guy, Zach, I was like, can you make the dog wink in the final one? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, and yeah, it makes me cry. It cracks me up. Yeah. So I appreciate that. But yeah, no, that's the dog poster I looked at a lot when I was in my metal breakdown. So that's why it's there.
It's such a clever little like recurring gag.
Also, like, obvious symbolism of like every doctor's office is the same, as well. Yeah.
Also, I don't know about y'all, but when I'm depressed, seeing happy ass shit, I'm like, fuck that in particular.
Yeah. It's like living in LA. I'm like sad. I'm like, why is it sunny?
We have 2 more questions. So the film's one major sex scene features Will at possibly his most vulnerable state, both emotionally and physically, not including the ass eating, like you said. Zach, did you find it challenging to channel Will's anxieties while being quite literally stripped down as an actor?
No, I mean, I don't know. I think the question implies, look, any scene, especially now, in today's world, which sounds so auspicious to say, but we're handling nudity and we're handling intimate scenes and sex scenes like very differently in film and on set. And Addison wrote a doozy. So I mean, yes, on the page first I was like, oh yeah, this is gonna be something, this is gonna be vulnerable and maybe difficult, I guess, from like a self-conscious standpoint. I mean, when you say like, oh, did you have a hard time with that? It's like, well, I can't be like, oh yeah, I'm going through emotional, like this is so hard to be naked in front of people. I personally, as an actor, I'm like, I've performed in burlesque and just in indie theater and like being a theater kid. It's like, I don't know, nudity and being physically vulnerable on camera is, yeah, of course, everybody's first thought is like, oh, this is going to be tricky, But the thing is I've personally, the actor and Zach, never had a problem, doing that, because I know that it's a performance. I know that, there's some distance between my personal life, whatever that may be, with physical intimacy and what we're portraying for the story and for the characters. And so this particular scene, all that being said, yeah, it was intense. But did I have a hard time channeling it or feeling what the character was feeling? I mean, no. In a situation like that, I feel like the more vulnerable I get, and maybe this is just like a weird sadistic power trip actor thing that I have, that I think actors have, like the harder the scene is, or more emotional the scene is, or or darker it is, or whatever it is, the more whatever it is, it's like we as actors, I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but I dig in. That makes me want to go harder. That makes me want to be like, no, you know what? I can do this in a freaking room full of 100 people, you know what I mean? And bearing my soul and my body and whatever. And it's like, it kind of becomes like an Olympic challenge with yourself. And then you add to that there's this vulnerability and this literal nakedness, but emotional nakedness. But Devin was there with me, man. We were fine. And I had I knew that I could trust Addison, and I knew that no matter what we did, on the camera and on the monitor, that like we were safe. That's it. That's all I need. That's all I need as an actor is for someone to look me in the eye that I trust and say, you're safe. I got your back. And then you go on in front of the camera and you make a bunch of mistakes. And somewhere in that is the performance.
Yeah.
So I had Devin and Addison that day, and we just got it done.
Yeah, I think it works because it's also like the emotional peak of the movie is like, it's all, yeah. It's a big like conflux of everything,
Yeah, it's exactly. And by that time in shooting, we're 2/3 of the way through. It was paced perfectly as far as the schedule was laid out. You know what I mean? Like we didn't shoot chronologically, but by that point, we'd been kind of in battle, so to speak, with the film and me with the character for enough time that I was like, oh, this isn't hard in the way that you think of a performance being hard anymore. It was just like, no, like Will is just there. It's so high. It's so raw and right under the skin. Like that's where I was, and I would venture to say you were as well, Devin. Like by that point in shooting, that whole day, that was epic, man. Like our performances and emotional tension was just like right under the fucking surface, and we'd cut and I'll never forget, like it wasn't this, it was the when I'm starting to be like, that song, and I'm getting all weird, and Devin's cradling me and I freak out. Like I remember we'd like do takes of that and I'd be like, cut, and Devin and I would be like, okay man, you good, okay, and we just like walk to opposite sides of the room and keep pacing, and everybody was just like, God, it's stressful in here, and we were just like, yeah, because we're trying to sustain this performance.
I mean, it was definitely the most difficult day. I mean, by all means, and not necessarily in terms of like everybody was having a rough time, but obviously tensions were high because it was a hard scene, but also like it is that, I mean, that and the mother-son, reverse choking scene later in the fantastical moment, those two scenes are so, we're all done in the same time and we're all in a room together, but it's like, we had that shit planned out, it's like, we had our intimacy coordinator. Like I never worked with him before, but it was like we all basically set all the parameters that, like before, of exactly what we were doing, what people were comfortable with, and going through it. And by the time we got there, it was like, okay, now let's play. And like, we were all comfortable enough because we had been later enough in the movie to be like, I'm uncomfortable with this in the moment. And we're like, great, so we're cutting that. We're like, okay, why are we doing this? Okay, we're doing this because of this. Okay, because of that. Let's play back for Zach and Devin so they can see it, so they can kind of understand what we're doing with it. Okay, cool, we're going with that. And even like some of the violent stuff, it like took forever because it was handheld and Devin was on the ground and coming back up, and we had to do that punch like, so many times. But because we were all like, okay, we got to get it, we got to do it right. And every we had stunts there, we had intimacy there, we had gore there. Like it was like everybody like trying to create that. And like
propriety really goes out the window. Not to cut you off, Addison, but
please.
It's just something that strikes me as like, I think, and I want to, after I say this, I want you to maybe rephrase, Josh, but I think what you're, what the question is implying, to some degree is like, like you're doing like, a sexy scene, and it's intense, and it's very bare all, and it's very 2022, like I don't, there's not a lot of like ass eating sex scenes that I remember growing up. You know what I mean? It's not exactly considered mainstream. Although it shouldn't be, because there's nothing wrong with that, and people do that, and that's how sex is.
I mean, just like it just really came from me being like, every gay sex scene I would be like, how did you don't just do that, like you can't just have, like, I remember, like, I loved Rocket Man, but I was like, Terry Edgerton and Rob Stark are like fucking, and I'm like, that doesn't, you don't just come on, gay.
Yeah, it's like, and it's
realistically,
yeah, it's like, and that's the thing, it's like queer physical intimacy it's underrepresented, right? It's like, and it's not accurate in general in any media, in any media across the spectrum. It's like the cis norm is the norm, and that's fine, but we have to understand that that's a choice, and the other thing is underrepresented, like many things that are now finally being attested to in 2022 socially and and ethically. And so Black Lives Matter, and it's like and it's just, I think we've all gone through that vibe check, right? Like that vibe of like, we have to we can't just coast through life anymore. It's like we have to be conscious and aware of these things and do things in our daily lives. And I think that that further the conversation, and I think that sex scene does it really beautifully. And again, when you're doing indie filmmaking and Gore's on set and the intimacy coordinator's there and Addison's there and Devin and I are both naked and there's makeup and there's lights and it's 1,000,000 degrees, it's like propriety goes way out the window, which is I think what your original question was implying. You know what I mean? Like propriety and like self-consciousness, I think that goes out of the actor's mind, in my opinion, if the actor's good anyway. It's like there's something, I had a teacher once tell me, connect to something more important than your nervousness, connect to something more important than your self-doubt, because that doesn't fucking matter to Will. He's getting his ass eaten and going and having a fucking mental crisis. You know what I mean? Like, come on. That's what's happening. That's way more powerful than any doubt Zach, can feel. So it's like, get over yourself, get the fucking job done, and it's like, and that's what happens when you have all that chaos going on set. It's like everything else fades away and you just zero in.
I like that. You're kind of forced to immerse yourself in the situation.
Okay, so as a closing question, we always like to ask about upcoming projects. We wanted to know what each of you have on your radars, if you want to share anything.
Well, I was just came out on The Dropout on Hulu.
I watched you last night in that.
Last
night.
Yeah, we watched that too. It was good.
I loved it.
In there. I'll be also in season 3 of Barry that comes out next month. And I'll also be in season 3 of Star Trek Picard, which comes out in 2023. Go ahead and film all of that, really fast, just for Sir Patrick Stewart. So those are some things that I have coming up, but I'm super excited to do. This is my first time going to South by Southwest, and I'm so glad that we're going in person. And I'm also just super happy to have had this experience with my Hypochondriac family, because I know that this is going to be another launch pad for each of us. So yeah, that's what I've been working on.
Oh yeah,
awesome.
We love you. You're amazing.
Zach, popcorn.
I actually have been having a lovely year. If you haven't seen Archive 81 yet, you should.
Oh my god, I loved it. It was amazing.
Incredible, dude. Like
So
I love. Oh my god, Dina's incredible in that. I'm really proud of that performance. I'm really proud of that series. It's pretty cool to see what that's done. Obviously, Hypo at South by, and then next on the docket, I can't exactly say. Let's put it this way. It's very soon. The drop is very soon. I can't give you the exact release date because I don't think it's been announced, but I'm in this movie called Good Morning with a U, MOURNING. Good Morning with a U. It's a movie with my many pop punk heroes, but MGK, Machine Gun Kelly, and Mod Sun wrote and directed it. And I'm in that, and I'm one of the leads, and it's awesome. And it's going to make you laugh, and I'm very freaking stoked for that. And then and I just wrapped up another film called Discussion Materials. It's a Wolf of Wall Street meets Ferris Bueller, which is like this really weird romp. I
That's
mean, but you know how
interesting.
long, yeah, you know how long it takes for films to get done. So we'll see that at some point soon. Yeah, so that's kind of what's up. The thing, and sorry, I have a list. The last thing I'm doing right now is I've been in the studio right after I wrapped that last film. I've been in the studio for about 3 weeks. We're up to like 16 songs in 15 days.
Wow.
I've been just kind of banging out. I do music, you guys. I have a band called Sorry Kyle. We have a full record that we've been hanging on to the whole pandemic that's done. So that's going to drop soon. I'm also venturing into solo music in the same genre. So like, think, MCR, Black Parade, that kind of vibe straddled with the big side of Weezer and Blink. It's like, yeah, so I'm moving into like a solo pop punk album of some sort, and I think it's going to be my version of American Idiot, so we'll see where that goes.
Green Day is my favorite
That
band.
sounds really awesome.
So I love that.
I hope so too. Come to the
Check that.
studio, have a beer later, see what we think.
Oh my gosh.
That's a real invitation if you guys want to come.
Oh, I would love to, but we're in New York City.
I would love to go. Yeah, Zach, you got to do another season of American Horror Story. Still waiting for that. I love 1984. That was me and my husband watched the shit out of that show.
Thank you. I mean, I also would like to do another season. Ryan Murphy, I'm right here. Yeah. I mean, that's always in the works. That's the thing about AHS. You never know when it's going to come knocking. So.
Oh, I know. And that's like a million. Yeah, it's a crazy show.
Evan popcorn.
Well, right now I'm just trying to not be really sick with this terrible cold that I have, and be able to go to South by Southwest. That's the main thing I have going on.
Love it.
And then career wise, I have a small role in Jordan Peele's new movie Nope.
Oh, you got that.
Really?
That's
that
awesome.
Zach helped me with, actually. I won't say anything other than Zach helped me a lot with that. So he came to my house and helped me with what I had to do in this movie. So that will be really fun. That I was supposed to have ADR for it tomorrow, and I think I'm gonna have to cancel that because of how I sound. I kind of am always like about to quit acting all the time. Like I
He's a very successful screenwriter.
Thank
Something
you. Hype the man.
I'm just like, just so you
Hype
know, he's
him.
not just an actor. He like is a very successful screenwriter.
Writing is sort of more what I do now. So I have a bunch of writing projects going on right now with different studios and production companies. So that takes up a lot of my time, and I love acting. I love it a lot. I think in recent years, writing has sort of been the main thing that's come my way. So I have embraced it. But then it actually was this movie with Addison where I left and I was like, oh yeah, I love acting. I forgot how much I like this. And working with Zach, I was like, oh yeah, this is always going to be a part of me. Like I will always act, even if it's few and far between. But yeah.
Thank you guys so much. We loved Hypochondriac. I'm probably going to watch it again, honestly, in the next couple of days. Definitely over the course of the festival. We wish we could be there in person too. That was the original plan, but
when you watch it again, look for all the sun and moon symbolism. It's everywhere.
quite a few things that I'm definitely going to be looking out for. The one-shot stuff too. I think there's definitely some details that might have missed. So I'm excited to watch it for sure.
Oh yeah,
You guys are amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a great fun.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys were able to take the time out. And thank you so much for chatting with us today.
Yeah.
Likewise.
Cheers, everybody.
Love you guys. Bye.
All right.